Hello and welcome to episode 4 of the Crimson Misery podcast. My name is Will Rainbolt, and I hope you all are doing very well. It is November 20th, 2024. If you are listening on Spotify or Apple or wherever you get your podcasts, please consider rating the show 5 stars. If you are watching on YouTube, consider liking the video and subscribing as well. So, I wanted to start off this episode with a bit of a correction that I ended up getting wrong. When I was looking at what I thought was the AP top 25 in college basketball, what I ended up looking at was the coaches poll. For some reason, the Associated Press had the USA Today top 25 posted, and it really confused me. And so, if some of the rankings sounded off, that is why have it corrected. So, Kentucky is actually ahead of Duke in the Associated Press poll. What a surprise. And I mean, Indiana also did not move down to 18th. They did in the coaches poll, but they did not in the Associated Press poll. And then Illinois, Wisconsin almost trading places there. Wisconsin's 19th, Illinois' 25th, Rutgers 24th. That aside, just wanted to issue that correction, and it also makes me realize that Auburn and Iowa State are going to be playing each other, which is like news from heaven from a college basketball fan's perspective. So, just wanted to get that sorted out before any of you all noticed, if any. I wasn't the only one that got this wrong though, because I'm looking at the front page, and I use Google mostly, but I also occasionally, because I don't have like a Google like Chromebook for a computer. It's just the default option on the Explorer page, and I'm too lazy to install like Firefox uh or Chrome. But the uh the AP Top 25 as done by AI is slightly off. They're the current top 5 teams, according to this model's thing on the front page of when you type in AP Top 25 NCAA basketball on Bing, the automated result shows up as this. The current top 5 teams are Illinois, Texas Tech, Wake Forest, Xavier, and Texas. 0 for 5. 0 for 5. This model is terrible. So, I'm just saying I did not do that poorly of a job, because at least I looked at a chart. I would have been a little more accurate than whatever this is. So, I'm just saying, at least humanity remains better than AI. What a surprise. All right. With that said, let's get into the first topic of discussion that I wanted to get into. And I'll get into college basketball in a moment, but this was just too. I promised myself when I was like preparing for the podcast that I would stop talking about IU football as much. And again, I might be obnoxious about it whenever they do play Ohio State. That is a bridge I will cross when I get there. But Tommy Tuberville took a shot at Indiana football. Why did he take a shot at Indiana football? Now, for those of you who don't know, Tommy Tuberville, former Ole Miss, former Auburn, Texas Tech head coach who became a Republican Alabama senator. He defeated Doug Jones. I believe that was in the 2022 midterms. I I'm like, yeah, no, 2020. And I mean, this is not the worst thing that Tommy Tuberville would say, because he has said some very questionable things on whether he believed white nationalists should be allowed to serve in the military. He said, uh, Tuberville says the Biden administration calls them that, white nationalists. I call them Americans. So this is the kind of guy we're dealing with. And again, for coaching in the SEC, this man is a bit of the epitome of just this white guy head coach and taking advantage of, you know, majority black players in a league that for a while did not pay them, uh, had great risk of injury. So it's a very, again, as a football, college basketball fan mostly, but still college football, um, I feel compelled to still call this out whenever I see it, whenever something like this happens in an instance where the the ugliness of racism rears its ugly head in this society. I feel the need to continue to say why this happens and why this is the case. So, which is very interesting for Tommy Tuberville, um, because he decided to say that Indiana bought their football team. Interesting take. And that he would be proposing legislation to make sure NIL is, I guess, corrected, if you want to put it that way, to where whatever he Christ. Yeah, he's he's been involved in name, image, and likeness legislation, and honestly, just has not succeeded in it at all because he just, which I'll get into in a second, but he he said he said on Monday, so this would have been the 18th of November. He wants there to be penalties for players who break their contract. This is from MSN. His previous legislation wanted players to complete 3 years of academic residence before they could transfer without penalty. He expects to work closely with Senator Ted Cruz, a Republican from Texas who will chair the important Commerce Committee in 2025. Cruz said on a recent podcast, he would prioritize a solution for the future and visibility of college athletics. These guys are evil. I want you to take like seriously make sure that you have that in mind. My thoughts are you sign a contract. I mean, you can't just up and break it, Tuberville said. You're going to sign a year, 2 year, 3 year. If you got a 3 year contract and you break it, there's got to be some kind of penalty. We go through all the rules and regulations when it comes to the Commerce Committee on that. But that one thing I do not want is Senator Schumer wanted to unionize all college athletic. And it's not. It's not any way for that at all. We can do it. We can do it the right way. Players can make money. Oh, sure, Tommy. Very again, you should immediately when you're against unionization and unions in general, you're a piece of shit. There's no ands ifs or buts about that. If you're a scab, if you are against workers' rights, if you're against different labor activities and labor rights, I'm sorry, you're an asshole. I'm not sorry. You're I I don't know why I said that, but yeah, he took a shot at Indiana while he did that because he was again, he's an SEC homer and he's essentially accusing Indiana of just buying their team. And if you look at the players that Kurt Signetti brought in, head coach of Indiana, he had a transfer class of 31 players. Most of them, if not, I think half of them transferred from James Madison, which was where Signetti was the head coach. That is not out of the ordinary for different transfers, but he also got, Curtis Rourke, who is very dark horse Heisman candidate. He won't win the Heisman, but his name should be up there, and his draft stock has definitely improved as well. It's hilarious though for Tommy Tuberville to say he doesn't want players breaking contracts when he in when he was decided to go to Auburn when he good Lord. He decided to leave Auburn for Ole Miss, and then when that happened, he was he departed from Auburn to Texas Tech, and he had a buyout of 5.1 million, and he ended up resigning. So what's the deal? Are coaches who are predominantly white allowed to do whatever they want, but a lot of the players who are also black, who maybe have, not been in the best financial security in the world because of how this country operates, do you think they should not have the agency and the choice to make that decision to maybe transfer somewhere else or to get their own money? Is that what you're against, Tommy Tuberville? Because it sounds like you're against that. It would go along very well with the comments on the white nationalists being American, which, well, I mean, also, I mean, yeah, I mean, they are American. White nationalism is deeply rooted in this country, but I think he meant that in a more patriotic sense than a nationalist. Well, both in a nationalist and a patriotic sense, but I think we all know where he's getting from. So yeah, this is the same guy though that like I believe had, you know, like tried to get the Confederate flag banned on Ole Miss's campus. So it's just like really strange politics with this guy. So mad about Indiana from Tommy Tuberville, a Republican U.S. Senator, which honestly, this is the other thing. Tommy Tuberville and any Republicans who would like to make it as hard as possible for players to earn money. I have a message for you. Um, Number one, hi. I know we don't know each other all that well, but keep going at it. Keep trying to make this happen. Honestly, I please make this your number one priority, especially under the incoming second Trump administration. Everyone should be on this. Everyone should seriously go about like try to make Indiana never make a college football playoff again. I'm serious. I'm serious. I mean, you have no better usage of your time. And I mean that sincerely. If you're, as long as this it doesn't, as long as this impedes any progress on trying to regress the country, especially with taking women's rights away, taking their choice, their bodily autonomy away, if we're stopping with mass deportations and even more tax breaks for billionaires, I say go. I say go for it. Go get Indiana football. Go get them. I'm serious again. As long as you're doing the right things in Congress and you're going after IU football, which is what you should be doing instead of doing this not as important stuff, you know, that's part of Project 2025 and what have you. Like that stuff can be to the side. Now, this is the most important thing you could do, and you should devote all your time to it. You should devote all your time to screwing over Indiana football because I know it's going to work at some point. And you should tell all the conservative Supreme Court justices that. You should tell your fellow senators. You should tell all your congressmen and women in Congress to go after IU football. Make that your number one priority, Tommy Tuberville. Make it your number one priority. Who cares about topics like abortion or immigration or the economy when you can discuss IU football more and be mad about Indiana? So keep going at it, Tommy. Keep going at it. I'm not kidding. I'm not joking. Keep being mad about Indiana. All right. So now that I have that message out of the way, let me briefly go over. the Marquette Purdue game. Marquette just slaughtered Purdue 76-58. I was a bit surprised at this result because I wasn't sure how well Marquette would be this season, especially after Tyler Kolek and what's his name? Name is escaping me right now, but someone can get email me or comment like what names I'm missing who went to the NBA. But Ben Gold, Chase Ross, Cam Jones, Stevie Mitchell had a great game. 21 points, 6 for 11 from the floor. Cam Jones with a double double. All of those guys that I mentioned scored in double figures. David Joplin with 9. Marquette had a fantastic game against Purdue, who aside from Trey Kaufman-Rinn's been a baller to start the year. Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer had really good games, but aside from that, I mean, you had Camden Heidi and Caleb First on the scoreboard, and then Wilberg with a whopping 2 points, and it no one else even no one even else broke the zero mark. So CJ Cox, who I thought was going to have a really, really good game after his heroics against Alabama, was held scoreless. Miles Colvin, another freshman, 0. That's definitely, I know it's on the road, and I know it's on the road against a top 15 team, but I thought they'd play a little better against a Marquette team that s- I'm not as impressed with, but at the same time, I got to give them props for knocking off Purdue. I mean, that's just the way it has to be. And Marquette gonna likely, along with Creighton and St. John's and potentially teams like Providence and Xavier, can make it a pretty competitive conference with UConn, who demolished East Texas A&M last night before the Purdue Marquette game. And I also got to give a shout out to DePaul, which under first year head coach Chris Holtman, former head coach of Butler, former head coach of Ohio State, who was fired in the middle of the season last year, took the DePaul job and has gone 5-0. That's not insignificant because that's way better than DePaul has been the last few seasons and past few decades. Like after the 1980s when they were a college basketball powerhouse, they just really have fallen on hard times ever since. And it really it just feels like there's no end in sight for DePaul, but maybe under Chris Holtman they could finally turn it around, and I'd be really happy for them because they've had endured a lot of suffering. So I have to give DePaul a lot of credit, even though they haven't played, the toughest schedule. They've beaten Duquesne out of the Atlantic 10. They've beaten Mercer, so they'll be on par with Alabama football for competition there. And Eastern Illinois, they won by 9. So they may not end up being this like powerhouse this season, but if they continue to play well, I I mean a record around 500 to end the year would be candy for for a lot of DePaul fans and a lot of DePaul students. So I don't know, for those who are living in Rosemont, you've got something to look forward to, I suppose. So that we also have tonight. We have a very, very, very intriguing matchup. Number 25 Illinois versus now number 8 Alabama. This will be taking place in Birmingham. I think Alabama will end up pulling this one out, but I'm very curious to see how Illinois plays on a neutral quote unquote site against an Alabama squad that might be playing a little pissed off after the Purdue game. I'm curious to see how a lot of their freshmen, like Will Riley, end up playing. And I could see Illinois making this a game, but again, I think Alabama just has so much that they just overwhelm you as long as they're hitting their shots. As long as Mark Sears doesn't have another 1-for-6 game, I could definitely see Alabama putting up a lot of points. So Illinois, this shouldn't be a knock against them, but if they do play well, if they do at least make it a competitive game, I mean, I got to give Illinois some props for that. But at the same time, I'm also sort of convinced that that won't end up happening. But uh, Illinois has a pretty good schedule. They have to play Arkansas, they have to play Tennessee, so in their non-conference portion of their schedule. So they, Brad Underwood's done a really good job at scheduling some tougher competition for his guys. So got to give I have to give Illinois credit for that too. Just making sure their schedule's like good. And so UNC Greensboro plays Indiana 6:30 tomorrow. That would be the 21st. Just please win Indiana. Just roll into the battle for Atlantis with momentum. That's all I'm saying. So we also have the Bahama. I think it's called the Bahamas Shootout. Is that what it's called? It's a recently new tournament. I think it was formed in 2021. So Baylor is taking on St. John's. That's going to be a very interesting game. I'll see how Rick Pitino versus Scott Drew. Um, Baha Mar Convention Center. I think that's in the uh, title of the championship. And then Tennessee and Virginia, the winners play each other, the losers play each other. Tennessee coming off that really great win against Austin P, and then Virginia coming off that win against Villanova. It'll be interesting to see how Virginia plays with especially on a neutral court against better competition. Sorry, Villanova, and uh, without Tony Bennett, and it's really for me, it's going to be another instance of teams that really play well in this get so much momentum for for their season. And I'm really hoping that a lot of teams that do end up winning or at least have a good tournament for not just this, but for any sort of in any of the tournaments, whether it's the Maui or the Battle for Atlantis, especially for Indiana. And for Virginia, that'd be really, really, really good. And I would rather he's not the head coach. I'm like trying to look up uh, Virginia's head coach now, and okay. Ron Sanchez is the interim head coach of Virginia. Okay, so for Ron Sanchez, this is an opportunity to really make some noise with this Virginia team. And I get that Virginia has bowed out the last few NCAA tournaments on a whimper. All of the talk about how they can't score, which has been very true. And I just, I'd like to see that change a little bit for Virginia because for some reason, I've always enjoyed the way Virginia does play basketball. And I know that's kind of a weird thing to say, but like especially when Virginia was getting one seeds with Malcolm Brogdon and Kyle Guy and Ty Jerome, even though they that were the first one seed to lose in the NCAA tournament round of 64 to UMBC in a historic upset. So I've just when they were actually on and when they could also score, like that's when they were really really fun to watch. That was kind of like with Wisconsin as well because they play that same sort of pack line defense, that same style of motion offense, and whenever they were good with offensively with Decker and Kaminsky and Trayvon Jackson, all those guys, that team was fun to watch. So I part of me does hope that Virginia does end up pulling off like some sort of run, but also at the same time I can't disrespect Tennessee like that. So anywho, and I think Tennessee's got it. I mean Rick Barnes is going to be prepared for anything. So I do yeah, I do think that Tennessee will end up winning this one, and I think my other prediction would be I have St. John's pulling off the upset against Baylor, so I think it'll be St. John's and Tennessee in the final, and Tennessee wins it. So that's my predictions for that and then Duke and Arizona play on Friday. That's also going to be a really interesting matchup, a rematch of the, I believe it was the 98 national championship. I feel like I'm just pulling that out of my ass, so I want to actually fact check that really quickly before I go with it. Basketball championship, and survey says no, that was Kentucky. Okay, which tournament am I thinking of? Yeah, Kentucky beat Utah. What am I thinking of? Was it 2000? No, what was it? Okay, I'm like okay, I'm like because I remember doing some research on this. 97 was okay. No? What the hell? What is oh my gosh. Well, I swear, what year was this? Okay. So, note to self, you have to remember like different years where teams won national championships. Like that's just like okay, no, it was 2001. It was 2001. Arizona lost to Duke 82 to 72. They also played in the 2011 Sweet 16 and they uh Arizona ended up winning that one 93 to 77, and then they played again last year. I believe Arizona won, or 2 years ago. One of those two. I know Arizona defeated Duke. And then I believe that was 2013 whenever Duke had like Jabari Parker and they played in the NIT tip-off and Arizona won that one. So Arizona and Duke have played a lot of really meaningful games in college basketball history. So another one to watch. And I'm really excited to see what ends up happening with both of these teams, whether or not Duke can play well on the road with all their freshmen, and then Arizona just continuing to roll along, maybe get a revenge win after their loss against Wisconsin, where they were annihilated. This is a get right game for Arizona, even though they are playing a team ranked ahead of them. So, but both of these teams have suffered some losses this year uh, that are really that would light a fire under a lot of teams. So, but aside from that, there's really not a ton of action before Thanksgiving week next week. I ended up thinking Thanksgiving was this week for some reason, so I was like preparing for that, and my aunt was like, "What are you doing? Thanksgiving isn't uh until next week." And I was like, "Oh, right." So, let's then switch over to women's basketball. Some notable games. I mean, South Carolina trying to preserve their number one ranking against Clemson. I mean, that's normally I'd say a road environment would be detrimental for a top five team, but not in women's basketball mostly, unless they're playing like other ranked opponents. So I think South Carolina's got that one. And then where is it? Yeah. So Notre Dame against USC. That's going to be a very interesting game to watch. Again, my pick for the national championship game would be USC for sure. But I could see Notre Dame making a game of it. I'm not I haven't seen a ton of Notre Dame women's hoops, but they've always been really good. And I just I just I wish there would be like more competitive games throughout especially during the regular season, because I know there can be a lot of blowouts. And I hope this is like what really starts um, making the games more competitive with Notre Dame maybe going on the road and not pulling off the upset, but at least remaining competitive. I would like that. I would like that a lot. And then the big, big game that a lot of women's fans are talking about is the game South Carolina, number one, against UCLA, number five. That is at 4 o'clock on Sunday in Poly Pavilion. Oh man, I again, it's just one of those instances where this would normally be a death sentence for a number one team going on the road against against number five UCLA, who is going to be near the top of the Big Ten standings by the end of the year. And I just feel like South Carolina is just going to dominate again. And because I got to give Don Staley so many props for the way she's won three national titles at South Carolina, and she's not going to stop there. I think she's got another title game, at least a Final Four in her sights this year. My overall pick is USC to win the national title, but if South Carolina wins it, I would not be surprised, especially if they get a road win against UCLA. I hope UCLA fans really show out because this game is gonna be really good, hopefully. Because if they don't, then I think just without that crowd energy, South Carolina is gonna end up rolling as they normally do because the environment just doesn't phase South Carolina players. And I wish like I wish that I wish that wasn't the case, and I think a lot of that does have to do with a lot of the crowds in women's college basketball just not being as large as the men's college basketball fans, especially the student sections. But I hope UCLA and USC and all of those teams that are playing big games so far this season at their actual home, I hope they do show out. And I'm really hoping for a good one. I am really, really hoping for a good one to bring us in to the Thanksgiving week. And believe that's it for a lot of the college basketball news, especially on the women's side. I know Indiana did beat 24th ranked Stanford, a get right game for them, which I'm happy about. But also, I mean, trust Terry, and trust Terry Moore, and have some cautious optimism. But also, with that being said, there are some noticeable flaws with this team in comparison to the last couple seasons. So just having some of that, but also trust Terry Morin as per usual. Haley Van Lith got her first career double double with assists, which is very surprising. I thought I really imagined she had more double doubles than that, at least with assists, but apparently not at TCU. So again, a lot of people question why Haley Van Lith transferred from Louisville to LSU. I mean, they were building a super team, so I don't really blame her for that. But at the same time, she just looked like so much better of a fit in Jeff Walls' system than in the or in the LSU system with Angel Reese and Flo J. Johnson. So I think aside from that, that is about all I have for you all today. So some shorter episodes this week, hopefully with more action, with more college basketball action. There can be a little more to talk about, and the episodes can be a little longer. But with that being said, thank you all so much for watching. Prepare for if you all are doing podcasts, make sure you know what years teams won national titles and what years teams actually played, so you don't have that struggle of finding when the teams played because I knew Arizona and Duke played for a national title. I thought it was like in the late 90s, not 2001. So, with that aside, thank you all so much for listening. If you enjoyed what heard, if you enjoyed what you heard, please consider uh, following the show. Make sure you rate the show 5 stars. And if you're watching on YouTube, like the video and give a subscription. It's free. You can do it. Takes just 2 seconds. So anyway, thanks again so much for listening. I appreciate you all, and I will see you next time, hopefully with a lot more to talk about. Bye bye.